Welcome to the verse-by-verse study of the book of Proverbs. Today we'll finish chapter 2. This chapter and the theme of the overall book of Proverbs is, what path will you choose? Recall the chapter began last week with an elder speaking to a younger person, sharing his wisdom with that person, which in reality is God sharing his wisdom with us, to assist us with life's decisions. Daily decisions, even minor ones, have a great impact on both our character and our destination. In navigation, there's this rule called the 1 in 60 rule. If a ship or aircraft begins a journey and is only off course by 1 degree out of 360 degrees, for every 60 miles they travel along that wrong path, they will miss their targeted destination by 1 mile. This is also the definition of sin, missing the mark, choosing a path, the wrong path that leads to harm rather than God's blessings. God, like any loving parent, wants his children to make wise decisions that keep us out of harm's way. And one of those decisions is the company we keep. God's wisdom and his presence gives us the ability to recognize when someone is attempting to lead us down the wrong path. That's the message of the remainder of this chapter, beginning in verse 12. Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse. The word perverse means to distort or twist words. These men cleverly attempt to pervert the truth in order to do what? To manipulate us for their own selfish, hidden agenda. They're called wicked. Wicked means to be unethical. Someone that would take advantage of us for their own personal gain or perverted pleasure. It could be a person, it could be a group of people, social media, advertisements, some celebrity, or false teachers. They say words like, everyone is doing it. Give it a try. It will be fun. No harm. It's exciting. It will be rewarding. These encouragements may involve the range of activities: sexual immorality, drugs, pornography, greed, dishonesty, foul language, lawlessness, cynicism, infidelity, callousness, and of course, pride. All of these are the opposites of God's core value and his wisdom. And when we see these, it's a sign we're on the wrong path. A path that only leads to headache and heartache. So how can we recognize these men or this media that encourages that path? Recall from the preceding verse from last week, discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. God's wisdom through the Spirit of God will give us discretion, which means the ability to make wise decisions, to recognize godly choices versus ungodly choices. These encouraging men have no power over us unless we choose to give it to them. These men will be further described in the next 3 verses. Let's take a look. These men who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. The verse is telling us that those who choose to follow these men will also walk in darkness like them, meaning outside of the blessings and protection of God. Unfortunately, there are only 2 paths in life: darkness and light. There is no option 3. There is no gray. Darkness is simply the absence of light, and always happens when we reject or ignore God's light. Unfortunately, in this fallen world, much of our media, our movies, our music, even our leaders in many cases, encourage, or even celebrate darkness. As such, that path is wide and much traveled, the dark path. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, the light path. Scripture, both Old and New Testament, warns us about these men. Let's take a look. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals. By their fruit you will recognize them. Next, the elder warns the youth about matters of the heart. Wisdom will save you also from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words. Again, this encouragement to the wrong path begins with these seductive, manipulative words, in this case of flattery. This elder is warning this youth of not submitting to the temptation that fuels pride and lust, a dangerous combination. And this could apply to adulterous man or an adulterous woman. This person who has left the partner of her or his youth and ignored the covenant she or he made before God. So this is someone that has been unfaithful, that has abandoned their spouse, and is unrepentant and without remorse. This smooth-talking person has no regard of honoring their commitments and uses intimacy as a tool to get what they want. The elder warns, surely her house leads down to death, and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. Sin always leads to spiritual death because it separates us from God. Looking for love or lust in the wrong place with the wrong person leads to a lifetime of pain and separation from God. Now, the verse is not saying there's no chance of redemption, but sexual sins are some of the most destructive and addictive. Pride and lust go hand in hand, and we all are susceptible. Surveys report, unfortunately, that 1 out of 10 of every pastor admits to having committed adultery. A recent survey said that over 50% of pastors are struggling with pornography. We live in a fallen world, full of sensuous temptations that can lead anyone down a dark path. The solution is diligent, daily leaning on Christ and His wisdom for direction, as noted in the next verse. If we lean on the wisdom of God, thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. Sexual sin, like all sin, is birthed by a single thought, a flirt, a word, an image, a small spark that we too often fan until it's ablaze out of control. Scripture's wisdom tells us we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. To take captive means that we are to view our thoughts and take them just as seriously as we do our actions. We're to hold ourselves and our thoughts accountable. God's wisdom says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That means when, not if, you and I have sinful thoughts, we're not to encourage them. We are to confront them and to confess them to God and replace them with thoughts as outlined here in a passage from Philippians. We are to fix our thoughts on the godly, not the ungodly. Scripture says, fix your thoughts on what is true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. We are to replace darkness with light. This is the wisdom of God, and what Proverbs calls living upright. For the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. The operative word here is live. To live means we daily choose a path that leads to a vibrant spiritual life, such that we can walk upright in freedom, free of the active bondage of sin, free of a life of despair, of shame and guilt, and a spiritual separation, free from the spiritual separation of God in this life and the next, as promised here in the book of Psalms. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell therein forever. For those that choose to daily follow God's wisdom, they will inherit God's blessings and his fellowship in this life and the next. On that positive note, we'll close chapter 2. We'll begin chapter 3 next week. Until then, may God bless you. Bless your family with both grace and peace. Aloha.